Hello everybody, this is Harry from Harry's Moving Castle. I'm currently not in my usual location for making videos, so this is why the audio quality is so bloody awful compared to my Yeti microphone. But I know that you all would prefer a video that would come out sooner rather than later, so here I am re-recording the audio for this video. But anyway, after that precursor, I'm now going to talk about the parting of the ways. This video is a direct continuation from my Bad Wolf review, so if you haven't done so already, please watch that before continuing down the rabbit hole. The 13th episode of this series opens as the peak of the climax that built up at the end of Bad Wolf. We have some tightly packed action sequences that bring us right into the heart of the action before we're even given the chance to breathe. The special effects unfortunately don't hold out so well, seeing as I'm reviewing this 11 years after its broadcast, but they still look relatively stylish. The TARDIS flying manically into that explosion looks absolutely fantastic. I don't quite understand why the Doctor and Jack couldn't have just teleported directly into the ship instead of flying directly at it and then teleporting in. So after rescuing Rose and showing off his force field, Eccleston waltzes onto the scene with more fantastic acting. The Dalek Emperor is then revealed, and what a marvel. Whoever designed this needs to be patted on the back as hard as whoever designed the controller. It's certainly a vast improvement over the one from the 60s, and Nicholas Briggs delivers this deep, raspy voice that just sends a chill down my spine. This whole idea of the Daleks being created from the contestants on Satellite 5 is a disgustingly brilliant one, as it adds this whole new dynamic to these 21st century Daleks. They behave like a cult, refusing to acknowledge their true origins in exchange for their own form of virtue. And this not only gives the Doctor reason to mock them, but it also scares him, as this makes them
more deadly than ever.
And this fear can be seen in this beautiful shot of him just leaning his head on the TARDIS door. This fast zooming shot also adds to the mental pressure that he must be feeling really well, and lingers for a painful amount of time to create a hopeless atmosphere. Upon returning to Satellite 5, we see Roderick desperately seeking his money despite the destruction that awaits them all, proving that people would rather be stupid and ignorant of the truth even in desperate times. Watch the Rick and Morty episode Get Swifty for more information. The Doctor then puts his plan for activating the Delta Wave into motion, and I love this shot here of Rose's skepticism of the Doctor's idea rise in her facial expression, as everyone else pretty much eggs him on. She knows how this game works, and she saw it in her previous encounter with the Daleks in Henry Van Statten's underground base. He's going to forget morality. She obviously doesn't speak up for fear of the amount of time they have and that it may be the only way, but I like that this was included, otherwise we too might be egging the Doctor on for the wrong reasons. So Jack and his band of renegades are ready to leave the Doctor and Rose upstairs, and I found out that John Barrowman deliberately chose to kiss both characters for the same length of time. But in one take, both John and Chris kissed for such a long time that they both ended up on the floor before breaking loose. The part that follows with the Doctor and Rose separating is not only brilliant but tragic at the same time. The music pulls us into the assumption that Rose has implanted this super great idea to save the day into the Doctor's head, but the idea is simply what he feels is absolutely necessary to keeping this girl safe. He already assumed her dead in the previous episode, and it's pretty obvious he would rather not take that risk again, especially with how much deep shit they're in now that they've pissed off an army of Daleks. It's when it goes silent for an uncomfortable amount of time when we begin figuring this out, and it's just heartbreaking to watch. As she tries to break free from the TARDIS, the holographic message plays alongside Rose's theme. It's such a beautiful tune that gives off the impression that this could be the end of her adventures with the Doctor at this time.
Let the TARDIS die.
Or you could make loads of money off it. Think about it, you could literally turn the whole place into some magical hotel or something. I mean, it has a swimming pool, a whole bunch of bedrooms. Come on down to East London and try out the amazing TARDIS Hotel. It's literally bigger on the inside. Possibly everything you could ever want to keep you occupied is here. Fancy a read? There's a library. Want to change your clothes to those of a dead man? There's a fucking wardrobe there too. And if they get dirty, there's no worries. Fear not, there is a laundry room too. If you've got the cash, you'll never have to see the outside world again. So come on down to the TARDIS Hotel for this short time only, because the hotel is actually alive and could die at any moment. Anyway, moving away from fanfiction, Rose's first encounter with ordinary life again is her ex-boyfriend and mother discussing the newest pizza takeaway. Unfortunately, this scene feels rather weak given how unsympathetic these characters are towards her. You'd think with this bloke being out in space somewhere and leaving her all alone out of the blue, they'd be comforting her in Jackie's apartment or something, except they are literally sitting and eating chips, a somewhat overused running gag of the series by this point. Then suddenly Rose pretty much breaks out into song and her performance transforms into something similar to Piper's earlier work as a pop star.
That you don't just give up. You don't just let things happen. You make a stand. You say no. You have the guts to do what's right when everyone else just runs away, and I can't.
It takes me right out of the scene because of this awful dialogue, and it's just almost sung to us that just springs out of nowhere. The Daleks then begin flying towards Satellite 5, and then the tensions rise as Rose desperately tries to return to the future and the Daleks begin blasting their way to the top. We have this fantastic moment where the android makes a return appearance to zap some of the Daleks back into space before one destroys it. It would have been really cool to have seen loads of those things stationed around the satellite, or multiple androids in the same room, considering that there were multiple versions of different shows going on simultaneously. I admit this may have only been the case for Big Brother, and seeing the android as a single entity makes this moment that much funnier, but those little additions could have made this part of the battle sequence more interesting. Sadly, the graphics on Linda's monitor are of an uncannily similar design to that of the earlier Dalek episode in this series that was set in 2012. The 180,000 years into the future, and they're still using these basic-ass graphic sequences to decipher where the Daleks are within their bases. Besides that, I do really love how Roderick's self-entitlement sticks with him even as he prays for the money he won to save his life. When Jackie pulls up with the pickup truck, I can't help but smile. I've never seen a vehicle like this receive such a dramatic reaction on TV before, especially as its bright yellow colour stands out against the grey skies and dull-coloured buildings of the estate. The big yellow truck then pulls the controls open to reveal the heart of the TARDIS we saw in episode 11. Now, I would like to think that the Doctor would have already thought about this being Rose's attempt to bring her back to the future as part of his emergency protocol, but then again, these events don't take place that long after her first encounter with the heart of the TARDIS, so it'd be stupid of me to expect the Doctor to take such drastic actions in such a small space of time. He does even acknowledge this mistake later on, to be fair, so I guess I'm just throwing those ideas out there if anybody wants to expand on them in the comments. Back in 200-100, Elaine the Pain from Tracy Beaker gets exterminated, and so does her would-be husband had they survived. Linda's door begins to burn, and I love the music at this point. It's got this childhood nursery rhyme type melody that repeats over and over as the blowtorch Dalek approaches. This then reduces to silence as the three Daleks outside float up in front of the window. The silence of the Dalek saying exterminate also works beautifully too, making her death that little bit more emotional to watch. The episode then climactically rushes to a center point, the Doctor. Jack is running away from the Daleks back towards the control room. Rose is traveling in the TARDIS to reunite with them again. I'm not really sure if this was intentional, but there's this red wall splattered with what looks like oil dripping down behind where Jack's body flies to. Just looking at this shot here, it looks a lot more bloody and brutal than what the BBC could probably show earlier than 9 PM, but it makes this temporary death that little bit more grisly and heartbreaking whilst bypassing the filters of the BBC. There's this really nice motif in the score that keeps appearing in the episode of descent, of failure, of disappointment, as everyone who supported the Doctor dies around him. It's such a beautiful noise that suits the episode's atmosphere perfectly. Then Rose shows up with this fantastic golden glow around her, completing her transformation as the Bad Wolf, contrasting against the dark purple and turquoise colours of the Dalek Emperor. I love that we have Daleks being made out of human remains, but also Rose has fused herself with the TARDIS, another living being to bring herself to full potential like the Daleks did. This then brings us to the answer of the question we've been wondering the whole series. Why does Bad Wolf appear everywhere they go? The answer is revealed to be rather flimsy, because Rose is now a fourth dimensional being like the TARDIS, as she has the power to scatter the message throughout time and space. Presumably because her comparatively weak and frail body is unable to sustain this power, this is why she doesn't just explain the whole situation and how to save the day to another version of herself at a specific point in time. She then crushes the Daleks, makes Jack the face of Bo, and we have that beautiful line,
I think you need a doctor.
before they kiss and he fixes everything. This whole segment's music makes this such a fantastic moment. Murray Gold once again makes everything hit hard towards the chest. I'm not going to even try and piece together why the energy was so easily transferred through their kiss, but it was a beautiful moment nonetheless, and it felt more appropriate than just the fact that the two are in love. It's not only far more complicated than lol, we're in love now, but they had to kiss because the fate of the universe rested in their hands. I'd complain that the Doc was a bit of a dick leaving Jack alone on that ship, but he didn't know that Jack had been revived. We saw the shot of Jack waking up, the Doctor didn't, so he probably presumed him still dead. I think as the years have gone by, I haven't forgotten the first time I watched this final part of the episode. I cried my eyes out when first watching. I thought you should all know how much of a little bitch I was when I first watched this, but I think I can justify why. Looking back now, I still feel that little bit of emotion, not just from the scene's contents, but the fact that we will probably never see Eccleston on the show again. The character this actor brought to the table was funny, strong, defiant, and so many other descriptive words, but the one word that summarizes it most is brilliant. I can completely understand why he left the show for the however many reasons I've heard. I think it's just the fact that the show has gotten so much worse since is what makes me crave for his return. I respect the guy and would never expect or demand his return because that would just be rude, but he was my first Doctor, and it made me very sad to think that he would become this whole different person in a matter of moments. This emotionally unstable individual is more heartbreaking to watch than the actual regeneration as he anticipates his change.
Rose. Before I go, I just want to tell you you were fantastic.
Well, that's debatable, but that's very nice of you, Doc.
And you know what? So was I.
I feel you, bruh. Yeah, I really like this regeneration. It's kind of fitting considering the bright and brilliant colours that are seen exploding out of his body that then changes his own, showing the energy that was killing him escaping back into the TARDIS. It's a brilliant and gorgeous effect, and then David Tennant appears. Funnily enough, it becomes more apparent after knowing this as well, but Tennant and Piper were not in the same room when they shot the profile shots for this scene. And that was the end of that.
That's season 1, boom! Season 1, I'm getting in your face, motherfucker!
So, did it suck? The finale of Series 1 is a fantastic episode of Doctor Who. The fact there is never a dull moment with the action, pacing and special effects creates an episode that just whizzes by until the emotion really hits home towards the end. Eccleston's performance is at its very best in this episode, very much so towards the end, but it is consistent throughout. The overall design and concepts that are brought up in this episode are thought-provoking and brilliant, not to mention the music that really makes this episode as emotional as it deserves to be. The story's brilliant, even if that scene in the chip shop does feel very much out of place in the grand scheme of things, so I'm going to give The Parting of the Ways a 9 out of 10. Thanks for watching. So after all that, I hope that I have put forward a decent case for why I think the first series is of a much higher standard than the newer series. Make sure you vote in the straw poll in the description for what episode you want to see reviewed next. I'll see you all in 2 weeks' time with my first Black Mirror review. Ta-ra! This whole idea of the Daleks being created from the contestants on Platform 5 is a disgustingly... Platform 5? It's Satellite 5, you tool. The part that follows with the Doctor, that probably went horribly wrong. Sadly, the graphics on Linda's monitor are of an uncannily similar design to that of the early... But the fact that we will probably never see Eccleston on the show again... What have I written here? Yeah, I really like this regeneration. It's kind of fitting considering the bright... Eccleston's performance is at its very best in this episode, very much so towards the end, but is consistently fantastic throughout. What on earth is that thing that just drove past?